You know Hercules as the golden-haired hero from the Disney movie. Strong, brave, a little clumsy, ultimately good-hearted, singing his way from zero to hero, with a gospel choir cheering him on. Forget that version completely, because the real Hercules, the one the ancient Greeks actually told stories about, begins his most famous chapter, not with triumph, but with the murder of his own wife and children, at his own hands, in his own home. The 12 labors, you know as an adventure checklist, were never simply heroic quests. They were a punishment, a penance so severe that it required superhuman strength just to survive completing it. Tonight, we are examining the version of Hercules that Disney could never put in a family film. And by the end, you will understand why the ancient Greeks considered him not simply a hero, but one of the most tragic figures in their entire mythology, born into hatred. Hercules, or Heracles, as the Greeks actually called him, was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene, born from yet another one of Zeus's countless affairs outside his marriage. And as with nearly every child born from these affairs, Hercules inherited not simply divine strength, but the permanent, undying hatred of Zeus's wife, Hera. Hera's hatred did not wait for Hercules to do anything wrong. According to Apollodorus's Bibliotheca, she attempted to kill him while he was still an infant in his crib, sending 2 serpents to strangle him in the night. The infant Hercules, displaying the superhuman strength that would define his entire life, simply grabbed the serpents with his bare hands and strangled them instead. A detail meant to establish his power early, but also a detail that should unsettle you if you sit with it. This was a baby being hunted by a goddess before he had done a single thing to deserve her fury. Hera's hatred did not fade. As Hercules grew older, it waited patiently for the moment it could inflict the maximum possible damage. The madness. Hercules grew into adulthood, married a woman named Megara, and had children with her, building a life that, for a time, resembled genuine domestic happiness. And it was precisely this happiness that Hera chose to destroy. According to Euripides' tragedy Heracles, and reinforced across multiple ancient sources, Hera sent a curse of madness down upon Hercules, a temporary but absolute break from reality that stripped him entirely of his ability to distinguish his own family from enemies. In this state, believing himself to be under attack, believing his own children to be threats, he needed to eliminate. Hercules killed Megara and their children with his own hands. Sit with the horror of that for a moment, because most retellings move past it too quickly. This was not an accident caused by someone else's malice reaching him indirectly. This was Hercules himself, his own hands, his own strength, turned against the people he loved most, because a goddess decided his happiness was an offense that needed correcting. When the madness lifted, according to Apollodorus, Hercules returned to himself, surrounded by the bodies of his own family, with absolutely no memory of what he had done. Only the horrifying, undeniable evidence in front of him. Ancient sources describe his grief as total, consuming, the kind of anguish that made him briefly consider ending his own life entirely. This is the detail Disney could never put in a family film. And it is also the detail that makes everything that follows make actual sense. The 12 labors were never simply a hero's journey, chosen for glory. They were penance, a punishment Hercules imposed on himself, or was sentenced to by the god Apollo through the oracle at Delphi, specifically because he needed some way to survive the unbearable weight of what he had done. The labors as punishment. Here is what most modern retellings get fundamentally wrong about the 12 labors. They are not presented in the original sources as a collection of exciting adventures a hero eagerly chose to prove his strength. They are explicitly framed as a sentence assigned by King Eurystheus, specifically because Hercules had killed his own family and needed to atone for it. The oracle at Delphi told Hercules that he would need to serve Eurystheus for 12 years, completing whatever labors the king demanded, and only then would he be cleansed of the guilt of murdering his own children. 12 years is worth pausing on. This was not a short quest. This was over a decade of Hercules' life, spent in servitude, undertaking increasingly dangerous and often humiliating tasks, specifically because he had already been punished with the worst possible thing a person can survive: killing the people he loved most, and living with full awareness of it. Eurystheus, for his part, according to several ancient sources, despised Hercules and feared his strength, and used the labors not simply as reasonable tests, but as opportunities to send him toward what the king genuinely hoped would be certain death. This was not a friendly mentor guiding a hero toward growth. This was a frightened, resentful king, weaponizing Hercules' own guilt against him, sending him into increasingly impossible dangers, in the hope that one of them would finally kill him. Consider the Nemean lion, the very first labor, a beast whose hide could not be pierced by any weapon. Consider the Lernaean hydra, whose heads multiplied the moment you tried to fight it conventionally. Consider being sent into the underworld itself to drag Cerberus, the three-headed hound of death, back to the surface world, a task that required literally walking into the realm of the dead and returning. Each labor was designed by a king who wanted him gone, to be the one that finally killed him. The humiliations, beyond the physical danger, several of the labors carried a deliberate element of humiliation that Disney's version strips away entirely. Consider the Augean stables, often treated in modern retellings as almost a comedic labor, cleaning out an enormous stable filled with decades of accumulated filth in a single day. But look at what this labor actually represents. Hercules, son of Zeus, a demigod capable of killing lions with his bare hands, was assigned a task designed specifically to be degrading, shoveling waste rather than fighting a worthy opponent, precisely because Eurystheus wanted to strip him of dignity, not simply test his strength. Or consider the girdle of Hippolyta, a labor that led to Hercules killing the Amazon queen Hippolyta, after Hera, still relentlessly pursuing him, even during his penance, spread a lie among the Amazons that Hercules intended to betray and kidnap their queen, provoking a battle that never needed to happen at all. Hera's hatred did not pause. During the 12 years of atonement, it actively sabotaged Hercules' attempts to complete his punishment, adding fresh violence and fresh guilt onto a man already carrying an unbearable weight. This is worth sitting with, even while Hercules was actively serving his penance, actively trying to atone for the deaths Hera's original curse had caused. Hera continued interfering, continued manufacturing additional tragedy, as though his suffering during the labors was never actually enough to satisfy her. The shirt of Nessus. If the 12 labors represent the punishment Hercules endured for a crime Hera manufactured, his death represents something arguably even crueler. A betrayal built from an act of genuine heroism, twisted years later into the instrument of his destruction. Years after completing the 12 labors, Hercules remarried to a woman named Deianira. During their travels together, according to Sophocles' tragedy Women of Trachis, they encountered a centaur named Nessus, who offered to help ferry Deianira across a dangerous river. Once she was on his back, Nessus attempted to assault her, and Hercules, seeing the attack from the riverbank, shot the centaur with a poisoned arrow, killing him before he could complete the violation. As Nessus lay dying, in a final act of calculated cruelty, he told Deianira a lie disguised as a gift. He told her to collect his blood, mixed with the poison from Hercules' arrow, claiming it could be used as a love charm, a way to guarantee her husband's fidelity forever, if she ever feared losing him. Deianira, trusting this dying creature's final words, collected the blood and kept it hidden, believing she now possessed a safeguard for her marriage. Years later, when Deianira grew fearful that Hercules had fallen for another woman, she made a decision that would prove fatal. She soaked one of Hercules' shirts in the blood Nessus had given her, believing she was securing his love, and sent it to him as a gift before an important sacrifice to the gods. The moment Hercules put on the shirt, the poison, amplified by his own body heat and the sacrificial fire nearby, began burning through his skin. According to Sophocles, the shirt fused to his flesh, and no amount of pulling could remove it without tearing his own skin away with it. Hercules, the man who had survived impossible labors, who had wrestled death itself in the underworld, was being slowly, agonizingly burned alive by a poison delivered through an act of love from a wife who genuinely believed she was protecting their marriage. The final act, understanding he was dying and unwilling to endure the slow agony any longer, Hercules made a final decision that reveals something important about how the Greeks understood strength itself. According to multiple ancient sources, he had himself carried to a funeral pyre on Mount Oeta and asked to be burned alive, choosing to end his own suffering on his own terms, rather than continue enduring a death Nessus's decades-old revenge had engineered. Deianira, upon learning what her gift had actually done, according to Sophocles, took her own life in grief, having destroyed the very thing she had desperately tried to protect through an act she genuinely believed was love. In some versions of the myth, Zeus, watching his son burn on the pyre, finally intervened, elevating Hercules to godhood as the flames consumed his mortal body, granting him a place among the Olympians as reward for a lifetime of suffering that began with a curse he never asked for and ended with a poison delivered through love twisted into a weapon. The true tragedy. Step back now and look at the entire arc of this story, because the pattern reveals something the Disney version could never capture, and was perhaps never designed to capture in the first place. Hercules did not choose the path of the 12 labors out of ambition or a desire for glory. He walked that path because a goddess's jealousy drove him to murder his own family, and the only available path back toward some form of redemption was over a decade of increasingly dangerous, deliberately humiliating servitude to a king who wanted him dead. Even during that servitude, the same goddess who caused the original tragedy continued interfering, manufacturing fresh violence, refusing to let his suffering simply end. When the labors concluded, and when Hercules finally found happiness again, remarried, rebuilt something resembling a normal life, that happiness became the exact mechanism of his destruction, delivered not through malice from his wife, but through a genuine act of love, twisted years in advance by a dying enemy's calculated revenge. This is why the ancient Greeks told this story the way they did, without the songs, without the gospel choir, without the happy ending, where strength alone guarantees a good life. Hercules represents something the Greeks understood with startling clarity: that immense strength does not protect you from immense suffering, and that sometimes the very things meant to bring you back from tragedy, whether it is penance, love, or simply trying to move forward, can become the instrument of even greater tragedy still. The real Hercules was not a hero who became strong and therefore triumphant. He was a man who endured the single worst thing imaginable, spent over a decade trying to atone for it, through suffering deliberately designed to break him, and ultimately died not in glorious battle, but burning alive from a poison, delivered through an act of love. So here is the question worth sitting with. As you finish this video, we are taught that strength is the answer to suffering. That if you are powerful enough, capable enough, resilient enough, tragedy cannot touch you. Hercules, the strongest being the Greeks ever imagined, survived serpents in his crib, impossible monsters, and a literal journey into the realm of the dead, only to be destroyed in the end by grief, guilt, and a wife's desperate, loving mistake. Perhaps the ancient Greeks were trying to tell us something modern retellings have quietly erased: that no amount of strength protects you from the people who love you, or from your own capacity to be manipulated by grief you never asked to carry. If this kind of story pulls you in, subscribe, because there are darker gods and older nightmares still waiting in the depths of this mythology, and I am not done pulling them into the light.